an honor. So what I'm about to present to you is the paper that I've been doing with John Lynham of the Economics Department, same time University of Hawaii Economic Research Office Organization and Sea Grant. So just an overview about the title. So our paper is all about, in economics we have this thing about externality. So what is externality? It's just an unintended cost associated with consuming a certain good. For example, you're a smoker. If you smoke, that should give benefit to you. However, if you're with a non-smoker and then you're emitting, secondhand smoke, that has cost, but nobody's paying for it, right? And so that is a result of inefficiency. And that's why, economists devise this Pigouvian tax or sin taxes, wherein that externality is being priced, and therefore you're creating a market, and therefore if you have a market, it's going to be efficient. That's what we're doing here. We want to know how consumers are evaluating seawalls or the effect of seawalls in terms of home property values. Now, before we go into the details, first thing we need to ask is, why do we care? Why should we care about seawalls? Recently, in 2010, the UN estimates that nearly half of the world's population are living within the 150 kilometer away from the coast, meaning they're living in the coastal areas. In the US, it's about 44%. And what's so amazing about it is that 23 out of the 25 megacities in the US are situated in coastal areas. Now, what you see in this graph is that in line with the population growing around the coastal areas, you see that there are also alterations of land cover in coastal zones, meaning the more population go into the coastal areas, the more they alter the shape, and therefore the sustainability of those areas are becoming endangered. You see threats towards coastal areas. Now, in addition to the increasing demographics along that areas, the threat to coastal areas are also being exacerbated by the fact that we are having or experiencing accelerated sea level rise. So this graph shows you the monthly mean sea level rise at Honolulu Harbor between 1905 and 2006. And then, so that is the, okay, this is working. So that is this one, the monthly mean sea level rise at Honolulu. And then what you see here is that after 2006, the mean sea level rise is rising at a much faster rate. Okay, so that increases threats towards the coastal areas. Oops. I'm sorry, I'm not a tech person. So with the increase in sea level rise, we expected that the demand for coastal management, ergo including coastal armorings, would rise as well. And so what you see in Oahu, in 2005, around 27% of the coastal areas, around 29 kilometers, are already protected. And most of the protections are in the east side and in the south. So, what are the unintended consequences of coastal armoring? We know that when a person installs a seawall, the idea is to protect the property. So we know it should be positively affecting the owner. But what about those that are not protected? What about those agents in the economy that are not protecting their seawall? How are they being influenced? So we see here the first effect is that the beach narrowing at the fronting the coastal, there's a beach narrowing fronting coastal armoring. So how does it work? So you see here on the left panel, in the left panel, you see that the beach width is unaffected across time if it doesn't have any seawall. Now, if you install a seawall, the tendency is you have deflected wave energy, and that increases erosion. So over time, what you see is there's a narrowing of the beach in front of seawalls. So you're losing your beach, all right? Now, what about those beaches that are laterally adjacent to those coastal protected areas? So here's an example that we got from Honolulu. So this is an actual photo. So what you see here is that for coastal armored beach, there's a loss in the beach, okay? But the laterally adjacent beach, it's already eroded. So you have increasing erosion, and so the tendency is the beach is moving landward, right? And so there's evidence and there are studies that shows that this may actually happen, particularly when the area is experiencing chronic erosional problems. Now, other effects would be, it's not pleasing to beachgoers. I mean, this is an example. You would rather have these rocks as beaches, right? Not rocks. So it's not pleasing to the beachgoers. There's also this placement loss, wherein you're actually, by placing seawalls, you're actually losing part of the beach. And then you also have access restrictions. So imagine if you have another seawall here, another structure, then you may have to go this way or this way instead of just going straight. So there's a problem of access to the beach. Now, given this anecdotal evidence, what this paper would want to achieve is that we want to have estimates. How do people value coastal armoring? Both in the perspective of a protected property owner and those owners that have unprotected properties. And so the contribution of this paper is that first we focus on Hawaii or Oahu Island, which is the chronic coastal erosion is becoming a concern. And then we use actual transactions. So previously, what studies do is that they do surveys. The problem with that is when they do survey, the estimates for demand, for example, the valuation for the beach is probably overestimated because there's no actual transaction, there's no actual payment. And studies shows that if there's a tendency to actually shell out, then the true demand is being revealed. And so what we're doing here is that we're using property values, actual sales values, a proxy to that's a proxy towards pricing preference towards a particular good. We also use GIS or Geographic Information System in defining armored beachfront properties, which is new. In the literature, they just do survey, so we don't know whether they have seawalls or not. It's just a rock or something. So we know that what we see in the map is an actual seawall. And then we also have spatial geographic attributes like distance to the coast and all that. And then we explicitly estimate the cost of flanking, meaning the cost of increased erosion brought about by installing a seawall at an adjacent beach or property. And then we also have separate analysis for single-family homes and condo or apartments. So our method is what we call hedonic pricing. So what does it do? It compares two houses, which is assumed to be different only in this example. One has access or near or has trees, and the other one doesn't have. So the idea is, assuming that they're actually the same, right? So the difference in the price, so this is in pounds because I'm going in London, so I'm practicing. So this is in pounds, house X and house Y. And so the difference in the price, you could take that as a proxy of the buyer or the consumer's preference towards having more trees. Now, the tricky part there is there's not actually a house that is exactly similar to each other. It's really hard to find a counterfactual. So what you need to do is to take into account other attributes, right? And so you disentangle the effect of other attributes so that you make sure that what is left is actually attributable to the good being talked about, which in this case is seawall. So we considered interior area, land area, number of bedrooms, bathroom, whether it's a beachfront, whether it's a condo unit, age of the house, distance from the coastline, the share of armored property in a particular census tract, the salier, the number of units per tax map key, meaning we differentiate a house versus an apartment versus a big condo unit which has a lot of units in a particular tax map key. And then you also have the number of TMK or number of units in a particular census tract to take into account, difference in neighborhoods. Okay, because you would expect that different neighborhoods would have different valuation of properties. So our key results, we see some indication that coastal armoring is really increasing the value of the protected property, but there's a tendency to lower those neighboring beachfront property. So in particular, we see indication that sea will increase values of condos and apartments, not much for single family homes. And the problem is the increase in the share of armored properties is negatively associated with property values. And I want to discuss that a bit more. So what does it mean? It means is that, okay, if you're a house owner at the beach and you install a seawall, it's not always true that you're going to benefit from it. Meaning, as more and more rely on coastal armoring, or as more people rely on seawalls, actually it's getting bad for them. So a good example of which is our estimate. So this is this table look at the estimated effect of the building of a seawall. So for example, if you build a seawall, then you contribute to the width of the coastline by 0.10%. Then if you're an armored property, you're gonna get a benefit of about 59,000, assuming that your value is about $1 million. Now, if you're an armored, you're actually gonna lose $34,000 in terms of valuation. Now, if, for example, that the increase in the share of armored properties when you install a seawall is about 1 percentage point, meaning there's 100 houses, right, along the beach, and you install a seawall, on the average, you're actually going to lose $247,000 in terms of household price or house values. And when you're an armored, you're actually going to be hammered more. You're actually losing $340,000. So the message that as long as more people rely on coastal armoring, it's actually giving the society negative benefit or cost. There's an unintended cost towards other neighboring properties. Does that make sense? And then the mechanism behind that is it's not about aesthetics. It's not about, people just hate seawalls when they look at it. It's actually about flanking erosion, which is the increased erosion attributed when your neighboring property put up a seawall. And that's the mechanism behind this cost in the value. So, in summary, we say that accelerated sea level rise is expected to increase coastal armoring or coastal management, including coastal armoring. You have so many options to do coastal management. You could do beach nourishment. You just push people to just go more landward, or you could put up a coastal structure. The problem is coastal armoring is more popular than others because others are more costly. And then while seawalls may protect some properties, they have negative effect on the values of other unprotected properties. So they have external costs associated with it, unintended. And so given that, we're saying that probably we need to reevaluate strategies or policies to combat the threats of accelerated sea level rise. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to switch topic real quick. And I'm Flo La Valle. I'm going to be talking about promoting undergraduate research with our project in Hawaii's Intertidal, or OPIHI for short, internship. And today I'm talking on behalf of myself and Joanna Filipoff from the Curriculum Research and Development Group at UH. A little bit of background, I'm sure you probably know this already, but the intertidal is the coastal area between high tide and low tide. And Hawaii's intertidal is really understudied for many reasons. One, people come here to study the charismatic coastal or coral reefs and not the intertidal usually. And also because we have a small tidal range. So the difference between low tide and high tide is only a meter here. While on the West Coast, it's more than that. It's a meter and a half, 2 meters, more or less. And we also have a small tidal window, meaning that the intertidal is only exposed for 2 to 3 hours per day, and really only in the spring when we have really good low tides during the day. So if you're a researcher and you want to study this environment, it's kind of hard to get to. Okay, so you probably know this. On the left, we have the animal, OPIHI, which is the limpet. OPIHI is the Hawaiian name for the limpet of the genus Solana. And it's culturally important. It's eaten, maybe you've had it before. And OPIHI in all caps is our fun acronym for our project in Hawaii's Intertidal. So not to be confused. So we see OPIHI in the Intertidal here, small and rarely, but we do. Okay, so OPIHI was a research and education partnership that ran between 2004 and 2007, and it was funded by the NSF. The original goal was to survey intertidal sites across Hawaii to establish a baseline which changes in species composition can be measured. And so the students running this program at the time did this through citizen science. So they trained 8 high school and middle school teachers to train their students in our protocols. And then those students went across 4 of the main Hawaiian islands at 13 intertidal sites and carried our protocol out. And the data from that those students collected then resulted in the first broad-based look at Hawaii's intertidal community patterns, which is cool. And now fast forward to today. OPIHI is a dual program. One of our programs is a citizen science program, very much like the one from 10 years ago. And this past spring, we had 31 teachers coming in and working with us. They resampled those 13 sites and 10 additional ones. We're going to run the same program this spring with 28 teachers. And the other program is an undergraduate internship. So we take about 10 to 15 undergrad students across the UH campuses. This is funded by Hawai'i Sea Grant. And this is what I'm going to focus on today. And it's what I'm funded through. I'm the main mentor for those undergrads. Okay, so we have 3 main goals for the internship. The first is to survey the original OPIHI project intertidal sites to assess how the intertidal biological communities have changed in Hawaii over the last 10 years. And we address these goals using 3 major components. So the first is we go out there and collect data at those 13, well, actually just the Oahu sites. The teachers are the ones in charge of actually going to those sites, but sometimes they undersample some of the sites, and sometimes the conditions are too rough for them to bring their students out. They're only allowed to get their students wet up to the knee. So when conditions are bad, when the swell is up, we go out there. So usually it would be nice if all field trips look like this, but when I take my students out, it looks a little bit more like this. Okay, our second goal is to mentor the next generation of community ecology ambassadors by engaging them in authentic place-based research. And we do this by increasing students' content knowledge and application of the scientific process, specifically with regards to field ecological research. And we show students what a career in science looks like and have them understand how to achieve one. And we do this through small group skills projects. So this is what the students spend most of their time on. We have a researcher doing current research in the intertidal come in and explain the scope of their work. And then I work with them individually to come up with a proposal and all of those steps in the scientific process until a final product. And so they work in groups of 4 to 5. And products have ranged from, conference posters and talks to outreach events to journal articles. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, to date we've done 9 small group projects, but I'm going to talk about only 3 of them and very briefly for time's sake. So the first one is the effects of trampling. So these students looked at the height of the turf algae before and after a field trip of 20 middle school students went out there and took data for us. They also looked at the algal fragmentation, so the little pieces of algae that get dislodged when you walk on these systems. And not surprisingly, they found that there's a significant amount of compaction of algae and of fragmentation when you have students walking around in this environment. So not groundbreaking, but it was really cool to show the students this data, because even though it showed them that even though we have good intentions in doing science out there, we still have an effect on the environment. Our second project I'm going to talk about is a 25-year review of this one method that was done at EVA 25 years ago. And it looked at the biomass of algae, and it turns out it's changed a ton in 25 years. This data is actually going to be presented by one of our researchers in February at ASLO, which is a big marine science conference. And this third project, the Limu Kupuna project, we had 2 Native Hawaiian students in our first cohort, and they were really interested in looking at traditional uses of limu, or algae. And these are pictures from Uncle Wally Ito coming in and showing us how algae is prepared traditionally. I got to taste it. It's a delicious day. Okay, our third goal is to provide opportunities for the students to network with researchers and community groups engaged in the study and protection of the intertidal ecosystem, to share information and resources. And the way that we have them network, first we send them out on the teacher field trips in the spring. By then they know the protocols really well, they know their species IDs really well, and they get to feel like they're the science experts. So they go out there and they love working with the younger students. And then within their small group projects, they get to work really closely and get trained by researchers. And then they also get exposed to all of the community groups, all of the nonprofits that we work with. And of course, they fall under the bigger umbrella of support of our funding sources. Okay, so most of our students are marine biology majors, but we open our applications to all majors and across all the UH campuses. And most of these students need independent research credits in order to graduate, and we provide them that 3 to 4 credits in the spring. Usually these students would go to faculty and grad students to basically ask for an internship, like a one-on-one type of relationship. And that system is kind of flawed, because if you're a faculty or a grad student, you would want to hire the most experienced people. And so you get a group of students who have no experience but still need research credits in order to graduate. And so we try to incorporate those students a lot, because we hire a range of GPAs, a range of experience levels, a range of college levels, so freshmen through super seniors, and we hire across all of the UH campuses. Okay, so every time you start a new program, there's going to be some hiccups. So some unexpected challenges we found from the first cohort is that field science lacks structure. So we're at the mercy usually of weather and swell and tide in order to sample. But the students don't have flexible schedules usually. So we found that we need to meet regularly. We need to tell them that they need to be flexible right up front before they apply, before we hire them. And we need to give them a lot of advance notice if we change dates on them. And undergrads have a lot going on. So a lot of our students, actually all of my students, have at least 1 to 2 jobs outside of doing school and this internship, which means that we have to make everything as convenient as possible. We hire mainly students with cars because we have sites all over the island. And we need to build a community really quickly so that they really want to hang out with each other, so that they're there as much as possible. And when you hire a diverse group of students, you get diverse content knowledge. So this is kind of hard, but I give them homework assignments every other week. We give them pre and post content surveys and exit cards where they can write what they are confused on. And so I know what to spend more time on, so that they all have a baseline of knowledge. That's the goal. And yeah, so there's a lot of educational research that shows that in order for a student or an undergrad to feel like they're an expert in the field, or in order to go on into that field as a career, that they need more than 1 semester long experience. And so our internship was 1 semester long, and now we've changed it to a 2 semester long internship. So right now we're in our second cohort, almost halfway through. Okay, so why is this worthwhile? Well, I think it gives future teaching faculty, or any faculty, an opportunity to experience and learn to value both education and research aspects of mentoring. I think as grad students, it's not implemented in our curriculum to become good mentors or to mentor undergrads in general. So this has been a really great learning experience in that way. And then networking, the students get to network with all those researchers, but so do I, which is great. And then because I'm fundamentally gathering data for all these researchers, I get to increase my number of collaborations and publications, which is really important as an academic. And there's nothing that excites me more than seeing the look on people's faces when they realize that science is cool. So I get to do that, hopefully, with the next generation of scientists and professionals. So that's why I do this, and that's why I think it's totally worthwhile. And I'm gonna just leave you with some quotes from our first cohort, an exit survey that we did, and I guess we'll take questions. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so do we have any questions for Arlan or Flo?
So you said the EVA research that you were doing is 25 years ago now. What are some of the examples of what has changed in the 25 years that you said?
Sure. Well, it's not published yet. So I don't want to give away too much. But back, so in EVA, you used to, this is from source, but you used to be able to go down there and basically grab these really high bushes of alba, Picnia, which is an invasive here in Hawaii, and you could literally just grab a bunch. There would be so much biomass. And there used to be a lot of native cocoa, which then was hearsay, was harvested to eat. And now all of the leaves there is kind of really short because of a much bigger instance of the Abramelia, the leather buckwheat, that invasive that Honolulu was trying to get out of Mexico. There's a lot of that there. So, yeah, it's changed over time.
Sorry, I just remembered the microphone's on for our online audience. And actually, so if you're interested in the Ewa Beach Limu project, Uncle Wally Ito came and gave a talk here that we recorded live stream, and you can watch the link on YouTube at our Hanama Talks YouTube page. Yeah, just about a year ago.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your OPIHI project, what kind of numbers are you
In
getting? Participant number.
Oh, so for the undergraduate or so our first cohort, we hired 12 students. Is that what you're talking about? Like how many students?
How many people are you mentoring?
Okay, yeah. So our first cohort was 12. Our second cohort now is 14. It's down 1, so it's 14. Yeah. And it seems like not a lot, but it's a lot. It's a lot of students to take care of. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Flo.
Yeah.
So, is it open to the entire campus? Because I noticed we're also doing coastal research, but I don't see any one from the economics department.
Yeah. So usually the way we recruit is we email mostly the science people.
Ouch.
But we will absolutely email you as well. I mean, yeah, the reality, we've had a political science major come in, but yeah, we should definitely reach out to you guys, for sure. I have a question for you. So my question is, what are some solutions, like some practical solutions that homeowners use in order to, I guess, stop the flanking that's happening? Like if they're in one of those, if their properties in the flanking zone.
One solution that I got from the literature is that they sue the neighbor.
Wow,
They
okay.
sue the neighbor, and but there was actually a case in Kauai. They sued the neighbor and they won, and so the neighbor was forced to do sand replenishment.
Oh wow.
Right. But I'm not saying that's the solution. I'm saying that was one thing that I saw. The other one is
Did the neighbor have to take down their seawall too? Or not?
yes and no, because the thing is at least in California, they usually have a sunset clause. So whenever you put up a seawall, after 20 years, the city or the county would have a reevaluation if it's needed or not. And so if it's needed, then they're gonna take it out. But Hawaii is a little bit different. So because most of the seawalls were built in the 1960s where they don't have the sunset clause. So no.
Do you see the same effect if people just plant shrubs and vegetation along the edge of their instead of the structural wall?
Mhm.
Do you see the same effect?
Because the problem with that is what you want to deflect are the waves. Actually, the source of the erosion, at least from the studies, are the deflected waves sideways, right? And so, what you can do in order for you to do that is to actually build another seawall or increase the slope of your beach. I'm not sure about the vegetation. Actually, when we look at the GIS, when we see increase in vegetation, it's not actually to protect themselves from erosion, but to increase the. Is there's I heard there's a different what do I call this? The way they measure property is that the usual practice they do vegetation, so they somewhat increase the size. But I'm not sure if that's true. That's just what I heard.
How young do they have to be to participate in that?
So the
college or can they be high school?
So the internship is for undergrads, but if a teacher, so the teachers get to apply to us to be in the Citizen Science Project part, and those are middle school and high school teachers, and so kids from middle school and high school are taking that data as well. Oh, one more comment. Those kids are actually really good at taking data because we had them, the kids, the middle school and high school kids, we ground truth that data with data from researchers who took the same exact data, and it was very, very similar. And so that's a relief.